Welcome to Big Business this week. Ringing the bell here at the New York Stock Exchange for the first time ever, President Trump named the 2024 Time Person of the Year for the second time after being named in 2016. Why? And was it close? Times national political correspondent Eric Cordelessa joining us now to discuss. He writes a brilliant article up on time.com right now. Good to see you. You write in this piece, as does Sam Jacobs, that it was not difficult. It was not close this year. Why not?
Well, for the last 97 years, Times editors have chosen the person who most shaped the world, for better or worse, over the last 12 months. And I think it was a pretty obvious and clear choice that this year was Donald Trump. Remember, 4 years ago, Donald Trump was considered left for dead. He was a pariah after leaving office in disgrace following his refusal to concede defeat and after the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And in the last year, he not only steamrolled the GOP primary in one of the fastest contested primaries in American history, he came out of becoming the first former president to be convicted of a crime, 34 felony counts, and it didn't scathe him. He beat not one, but two Democrats in the general election. He survived an assassination attempt. And when he won the election, he clinched all 7 of the swing states and won the majority of the popular vote, the first time a Republican has won the popular vote in 20 years since George W. Bush in 2004. And he expanded his base and his coalition of support in pretty profound ways with young people and Latino men and other demographics. And right now he is poised to enter the White House and dramatically reshape the country. And we recently sat down with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago for 65 minutes, where he made all sorts of news on his plans for the next 4 years.
You said he was different. How?
Well, I think he's a little more subdued than he was years ago. I mean, I last spoke with President Trump in April, and, he had a lot of confidence. He was more assertive at that time. And right now, he is just calmer. I mean, he's less defensive in tone. As I said, he's more subdued, and he's in some ways wistful. He remarked, it was a very striking comment, how he's going to miss campaigning. He said, he was talking about the last rally he went to in Michigan on the eve of the election, and he said, it's sad in a way, it will never happen again. So I think Trump is in a very kind of liminal place where the volume is turned down.
Yeah, it's interesting. He can still talk about putting Liz Cheney in jail for doing her constitutional duty and then soften it with the tone. It's an interesting, fascinating dichotomy. You write, Trump's political rebirth is unparalleled in American history. Have you ever seen anything like this creature, even outside of politics? And what's his signature characteristic that allows him to do this?
It's fascinating. I mean, obviously, Donald Trump is a unicorn in a lot of ways, right? I mean, as we've seen, you marked the sort of bicameral relationship, you might say, between a softened toned and a hardened policy agenda and other kinds of agenda when he gets into office. But, Donald Trump is clearly someone with a lot of resilience. I mean, his critics and his champions would both acknowledge that. This is someone who can come back from scandals and controversies and you name it that would sink virtually any other political figure. But Donald Trump has a just kind of singular ability to capture the imaginations of the American people and bounce back from humiliations and defeat. And, this is unquestionably the most improbable political comeback in American history.
Several times over. You go back to the grab him by the blank Access Hollywood video. Everyone in every party said he could never come back from that, let alone the multiple criminal investigations he has proven he is literally bulletproof after the assassination attempt. Many have told me that this is a Republican wave across the country. You look at the popular vote, it's now about 2 million vote margin of 155 million votes. So it's not the overwhelming wave that some have speculated on. And my question to you is it a Republican wave? Would Nikki Haley, would Ron DeSantis, would any other Republican have come close to what he did electorally?
Well, it's impossible to come up with a counterfactual. I mean, I think you're right to point out that this was the closest presidential election since the 19th century. Right? It's not the same kind of overwhelming mandate that we saw when Nixon was reelected or when Reagan was reelected. That said, Donald Trump's victory is very significant. He won all 7 of the swing states. He won the popular vote as a Republican for no Republican has done that before in 2 decades. And, he brought in new voters into the fold. And I think a very significant demographic I would point to are young voters, right? He won voters between the ages of 18 and 44, made massive inroads, particularly with young men. And, that says a lot of things. One, it says that you have a young generation of Americans whose political consciousness has been shaped by Donald Trump's political arc, and it also suggests that there are young people in this country who will be the next generation of leaders who find Trump's strongman governing style and appeal, it appeals to them.
I have a 16-year-old at home that makes a lot of sense. In fact, I think one of the underplayed stories is the influence of Barron Trump on this campaign, how he encouraged him to meet with Logan Paul and the like. He won on a message of fixing the economy, which I find remarkable as someone who studies the economy and spends my time here at the exchange. At the time, throughout the campaign, stock market was at all-time highs. Job creation was high, unemployment was low, gas prices at a 3-year low. You're looking at domestic energy production at an all-time high. By about every metric that we measure, the economy was strong. How did he win on fixing the economy?
It's really interesting. First off, as you point out, the economy is humming right now. Inflation has gone down. Real job growth is going up. The unemployment rate is low. We're at full employment. But, I think what Donald Trump tapped into is a kind of post-pandemic restlessness where people are still traumatized and feeling aggrieved by the fact that we did experience post-pandemic inflation. Prices are still higher. Their experience within the real economy is difficult. Prices of gasoline, eggs, meat, et cetera, have all gone up. And we've seen that kind of anti-incumbent fervency around the world, not just here in the United States. And that is something that Donald Trump benefited from. And I think it's important to note, a lot of these forces we're talking about are not going to go away. The same forces that Donald Trump rode to power, he will have to contend with once he enters the White House.
No question. He told you, quote, anything can happen. What we know he's promising, tariffs and mass deportations. Will they happen, and what will be the impact?
Well, I think the tariffs will certainly happen to an extent. I mean, Donald Trump loves tariffs. He imposed tariffs in a first term, and on China and Europe and other countries that import into the United States. He's certainly planning to ramp up tariffs on China. We'll see what he does with other nations, whether he does the blanket tariff, the across-the-board tariff of 10% or more on all imports, or whether he tries to use tariffs as a negotiating tool, as a leverage instrument in trying to get other countries to bend to his will in various ways. I think as far as deportations go, immigration is the policy area where he's going to be the most aggressive. That was his most sort of definitive campaign promise on the trail, and Donald Trump is not going to want to go in and seem like he didn't fulfill what he set out to do. I think you're going to see a flurry of executive orders on day one to resume construction of the border wall, to end catch and release, to reinstate Title 42, a pandemic-era measure that made it easier to deport migrants from the country. And I think you're going to see them embark on a deportation operation. Whether he's able to carry it out to the level or the scale that he's promised on the campaign trail, north of 11 million undocumented migrants, that certainly is a very tall order. It's not clear we have the resources or the capability to deport that many people that quickly. And I think one news item that came out of my interview with President Trump most recently is that he opened the door to building more camps, more detention centers to hold migrants before the U.S. government is able to send them abroad. And his incoming border czar, Tom Homan, told me we're going to need beds. And what that means is, because you can't just round up a migrant and deport them that day, you have to strike agreements with the receiving governments. You have to hold them someplace in that intervening time period. And based on the number of people they're planning to round up, they're going to need to place them in camps and detention centers, raising the specter of the kind of Japanese internment camps we saw in the 1940s.
What an image that'll make around the world, and a cost some have estimated at $300 billion. Final question. In Trump's entourage today, ringing the bell here, RFK, Vice President Vance, the Secretaries of Treasury, Interior, and Commerce, the CEOs of Goldman, Citi, Verizon, Target, hedge funder Bill Ackman. No sight of his wingman, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. Not a tweet from Elon about the time honor. He tweets when the wind blows. How responsible was Elon for the win? How do you see this relationship playing out?
Well, I can't predict how it's going to play out. Obviously, Donald Trump is known for his unpredictability, and relationships have come and gone. I would say that Elon Musk was very significant in Donald Trump's win. I mean, first and foremost, he poured $250 million into the race to help Donald Trump's election effort. But Elon Musk came in at a very pivotal time for Trump following the assassination attempt, and Elon was also pivotal in turning X into a vehicle to sort of promote Trump and other right-wing causes. And I think that really helped him make inroads with the low propensity young male voters who the campaign believed were central to winning the election. As a top campaign aide to Trump told me that they had a campaign thesis, which was to max out the men and hold the women. And what they meant by that was, we don't want to lose women by more than we did against Clinton and Biden. Clinton and Biden both beat Donald Trump with women by 13%. So they said, we just got to kind of hold that number, but make inroads with men. We lost the 2020 election because Biden was able to cut in to Trump's win with men over Clinton by 5%. So their idea was, people already have baked in views of Trump. He's the most famous person in the world. They're not going to change their mind, but it's young men who don't vote regularly that if we can get them politically activated and to vote for Trump, that will tip the scales in the swing states and across the nation. And it was a bet that they made, and it paid off.
It's an excellent piece up on time.com right now. Thanks so much to national political correspondent Eric Cordelesa. Appreciate the time. Up next, the story that is gripping this nation for the past week, the cold-blooded killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson on the streets of Manhattan. That's next. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Big Business This Week. I'm Dave Briggs on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Time now for a story gripping the nation for the past week, the brutal murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson on the streets of Manhattan. The accused killer, 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, was arrested at a rural Pennsylvania McDonald's and is now facing first-degree murder charges. A cold-blooded murderer, Mangione has a master's degree in computer science from Penn and comes from a wealthy real estate family in Maryland, complicating this picture. He's been made a virtual folk hero on social media with thousands of messages of support and condemnation of the insurance industry. Here to help us unpack all of it is Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter at the Washington Post, Daniel Gilbert. Daniel, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with that accused killer. What are we learning about Luigi Mangione and any potential motive?
Right. Well, as you said, he comes from a background of privilege. He is a product of an elite prep school, and went on to the University of Pennsylvania and earned his degrees in computer science, bachelor's and master's in 4 years, and so seemed on a trajectory for success from an early age. And so while the outlines of his life and the allegations of the crime that he's alleged to have committed are coming into focus, there's still this real question about motive that we're trying to better understand. And yesterday we did some reporting on how his own personal health conditions have helped shape the way that he looked at the healthcare system in the U.S. And you could really tell some frustration and disdain from the way that he talked about the medical establishment. But we are still trying to understand how it got from there to what the police are alleging that he did in the killing of Brian Thompson.
Yeah, and from what you found, was there any line of demarcation, if you will, any point at which it appears that Luigi may have snapped? Was it this supposed back surgery?
Well, it's a really good question. And what we know about the back surgery that he has talked about in his social media accounts that we've now traced to him is that he had this surgery. He'd had this spine condition for a long time, spondylolisthesis, where the vertebra shifts forward and can cause pretty severe low back pain and leg pain. And he talked about for a long period of time struggling with this condition and having it become worse over time, to the point that in July of 2023 he gets surgery And what we know from what he's posted publicly is that it seems like the surgery went well, and he was pleased with the outcome, at least in the months after that, and had given advice to other people who were struggling with the same condition about seeking surgery. So it isn't clear if there's anything related to the surgery itself that might have gone wrong, other than, we know that this was a chronic condition and it caused him great pain. In terms of a breaking point, the clearest break we see is that his social media accounts, Reddit, X, formerly Twitter, Goodreads, they basically go dark in May or June of this year. And that's around the same time that he stopped communicating with everyone that we found who had been in touch with him.
The words printed on the bullets fired from the 3D printed weapon, and what he shouted after he got out of the police car about an insult to the American people's intelligence. What do you make of all that?
It's hard to know. The words that had been handwritten on the casings of the bullets found at the scene, delay, defend, depose, they call to mind a common criticism that you see a lot of insurance industry tactics when it comes to denying claims. And so from the very get-go, police have looked at that as a clue in terms of the motive, and a suggestion that Brian Thompson, CEO of UnitedHealthcare, may have been targeted because of the nature of his work. And based on what police have said about what they found in the suspect, they found a 3-page handwritten document that they have described. They haven't disclosed it fully yet, but they have described it as expressing a disdain for corporate America and healthcare system in particular. And I think he's calls out that the healthcare system is the most expensive in the world, but our life expectancy is something like 42nd, at least according to what he allegedly scrawled in this document.
And studies now show that UnitedHealthcare had the largest denial rate, not even close compared to its peers. I'm just curious your take on, here's an Ivy League guy who kept the 3D printed murder weapon on him, who kept a manifesto on him, who hung out in broad daylight where anyone could ID him. He didn't change his very identifiable appearance. Did he want to get caught?
You'd have to be inside his head to know. But you're right in laying out this like really curious set of circumstances, and this young man who is clearly very intelligent and very accomplished. And what we are all struggling to understand is how he goes from where he began. The son of this very wealthy, prominent family in Maryland, a prince of the city, as in Baltimore, as one of my colleagues described him, living what, from all appearances, appeared to be a charmed life, to now this accused killer. And so it's hard to understand exactly how you get there. And even though, you asked, like, did he want to be captured, or did he want to be caught? It's worth pointing out that it took police 5 days to catch up to him, and that he was pretty meticulous about wearing a face mask, about wearing a hood, avoiding cameras the extent that he could. And it was like, even in a place with the kind of camera surveillance of Midtown Manhattan, it was hard to get a facial recognition to track him. And he was able to evade capture this long. So why he kept this gun that authorities say now matched the gun used in the crime, we don't know.
Among the many things that are mysterious, the online reaction, an outpouring of support that continues today, even merchandise flying from several websites. What do you make of all that?
Well, it's certainly not news that a lot of people are frustrated with the healthcare system here in the U.S., and particularly health insurance. I think probably everyone who's interacted with the system can relate to feeling just certain anger at how they are treated and the way the system works. But the killing has really seemed to hit a nerve for many people, and I think has been shocking. certainly for the world of health insurers who don't really think about what they do in the same way and are now grappling with not just the targeting of a prominent health insurance executive, but this swell of support for this man who's been accused of the murder. I think is very hard for people in the industry to understand, but it's a real sentiment.
A fascinating case, no doubt, has gripped this country. Really appreciate you being with us. Daniel Gilbert from the Washington Post. Really appreciate it. Coming up, the business news you may have missed this week, including why two major grocery chains are no longer joining forces. Stay with us. Welcome back to Big Business This Week. I'm Dave Briggs. Time now to bring in our friend Peter Green, author of the Big Business This Week newsletter. Good to see you, Peter. So the biz story everyone may have missed is a massive merger blocked. Could it be good news for the price of groceries? And what happened with Kroger and Albertsons?
Yeah, well, maybe you all heard Donald Trump talk about groceries as the new big thing. He thinks it's a great word. Well, it's a great word and also a great business to be in, particularly if you've got close to monopoly in your market. That's what the Department of Justice said was going to happen if Kroger's bought Albertsons. They had agreed about 2 years ago that Kroger was going to buy Albertsons for almost $25 billion. They spent a lot of time working on this, and then the DOJ wanted proof that they weren't going to raise prices and limit consumer choice when this happened. A judge said that this merger was not going to be good for consumers and agreed with the DOJ to block it. So what happened next? Albertsons then turned around and sued Kroger for dragging its feet and said Kroger had gotten cold feet, didn't actually want the merger to go through, and didn't do the due diligence it should have done to convince the DOJ and the court to let the merger go ahead. So looks like your grocery prices might stay the same, except the two companies spent almost $1 billion just prepping for this merger. So they're going to have to make that up somewhere.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Perhaps Lina Khan's final act with the Biden administration as she is on her way out the door. Could the Trump administration bring this deal back, or does the lawsuit kill it for good?
The lawsuit's probably going to kill it because it's pretty clear that Kroger's didn't see the economic interest in this anymore. You know, groceries are a really small margin business, between 2 and 6%. So you really got to look at everything. And dynamic, population moves, prices, consumer choices can set a deal that 2 years ago looked like a good thing, can maybe make that not such a good deal looking forward now, particularly with the uncertainties that are going to come with potential tariffs and other issues with the uncertainty of the changes Trump's going to make to the economy.
That is an excellent point, and interesting to note here, these are the 5th and 10th largest retailers, nowhere near the size of Walmart nor Amazon, and we don't hear much from either administration about their prices, but hey, bygones. Have to leave it there, Peter. Our thanks to Peter Green. Go to cheddar.com/BBTW to sign up for our weekly newsletter. But for now, don't go away. Much more Cheddar up next.